Hi, everyone. This is Amie Wright. I am the executive director of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, aka TCAF, and this is the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Executive Director Amie Wright about the 2025 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Amie Wright is a comics librarian and public historian based in Ontario who's been organizing comics programming in Canada and the United States since 2013. Amie has created in-person and virtual programming for New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, the American and Ontario Library Associations, and TCAF. Amie is the former manager of school outreach, MyLibraryNYC, at the New York Public Library, and the formal inaugural president of the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable of the American Library Association. A current public history PhD candidate at Carleton University in Ottawa, researching the history of comic censorship in Canada, Amie also teaches a comics course in the Department of History at Carleton. Amie is the executive director of the 2025 Toronto Comic Arts Festival, also known as TCAF. Considered to be amongst the premier comic arts festivals in the world, TCAF is an annual 2-day festival in downtown Toronto. Held since 2003, TCAF is unique for its scale and scope, welcoming over 28,000 local and international visitors and over 315 artists, and its continued focus on independent arts culture and accessibility, remaining a free public and non-commercial arts and cultural festival. TCAF 2025 is being held from June 7th to the 8th at the new location, Toronto Metropolitan University's Mattamy Athletic Centre, with additional programming in the surrounding neighbourhood. Libraries and Education Day and We're Balloon Academy are scheduled for Friday, June 6th. So without further ado, here's my chat with Executive Director Amie Wright about the 2025 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So Amie Wright, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad to be here and talking TCAF.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Before we get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
Oh, this is such a good question. And I've been sort of trying to rack my head. So I actually don't remember the title as much as I remember the experience. So there were no comic books growing up, like my local library, and we didn't have a local bookstore, but we would go and spend a few weeks every summer on Cape Cod, because I'm from the States originally and grew up in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And so we'd go to Cape Cod every summer, and there was like a little shop along the beach, and they had comic book spinners. And that was the first time that I had sort of seen that. And so I just always, with whatever money my parents would give me for, snacks and stuff at the beach, I would just always go and buy. And they were probably, I have spent years trying to figure out exactly which ones they were, but it was a lot of those very pulpy, World War II inspired one. I probably read even like some Sergeant Rock, I'm not sure, but it was very much like, war and violence and like romance too. And it was pretty amazing and like blew my 8-year-old brain so much because I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, didn't read Archie though, but definitely like anything that like had a good, strong storyline and, had heroes and villains. I was all down for that.
That's cool. That's definitely a first growing up, that's for sure, and reading books like that.
Yeah.
And now you've parlayed all that experience of reading Sergeant Rock into dealing with a comic arts festival. So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. For those who are not familiar with it, how would you give the elevator pitch?
Yeah, so I should say, I think in nonprofit and even arts communities, we often talk in acronyms too much. So, of course, TCAF, we call the festival the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So we are one of the largest independent comics arts festival in North America and considered one of the most sort of notable and larger comic arts festivals in the world for independent comics arts. We have been held since 2003 in Toronto. and is a free, accessible event right in the heart of downtown Toronto. So, with a lot of comic arts festivals, there may be badging, there may be a small admission cost. TCAF is free, and you do not need to register. You can just show up and meet more than 300 different comic artists from around Toronto, around Canada, and internationally. And in any given year, we have about 50% of our exhibitors from elsewhere.
That's tremendous. It's always a great event, that's for sure. I was looking up your bio, and it's just tremendous. The fact that you've been a comics librarian, you're teaching courses, you've actually been involved in many of the major events that we're familiar with, like New York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con and all sorts of events. But what is your role particularly for this Toronto Comic Arts Festival?
So I am the new executive director for the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So I have, I guess, the wonderful burden and responsibility and great benefit of being responsible for the oversight of the festival. So working with an exceptional team, I am making sure that the festival runs, the festival that, that all of our guests are booked, that our location is booked, and that the grants are written, and we're doing everything. It is a wonderfully big but wonderful job to have, an opportunity to have.
Yeah, they usually say for events like this, it takes a village. And I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
volunteers, a lot of people that come to put together. Can you talk a wee bit about the people who are helping you out for this event?
Yeah, so we do have a part-time team, and I'm even a part-time executive director. So we do have a part-time team that is helping run the festival. A lot of people in Canadian comics may know the name of our artistic curator, Ho Anderson, of course, noted Canadian cartoonist. And so he is working on general programming and working with publishers and getting our general programming in order. We have a marketing coordinator, Kate Fain. So if you've seen our recent Support TCAF campaign, Kate has a background in nonprofit marketing communications and has been behind our recent fundraising campaign that we launched with our new location shift. We have a fantastic team. I'm probably not going to have a chance to call them all out. Everyone is exceptional. Mandy Folsom is our TCAF administrator, and Mandy is the one responsible for corresponding with all of our exhibitors. So we do have more than 300 exhibitors, so that's a lot of table management, but Mandy is also trained as an artist, which definitely brings so much to the work that she is able to do because she understands a lot of the questions that people are bringing to the table. Aaron King is our digital experience manager. So he is behind all of the website stuff that you see, also another trained artist. We have MJ Lyons, who is a Toronto-based writer who is working as our assistant producer this year. Jalen Innes is also one of our production teams and works in a lot of arts and cultural festivals throughout the city as well. We have Faduma Garay, who's doing our offsite programming. And Faduma, again, all very active in the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, is one of the co-founders of the Black Nerds in Toronto. We have two volunteer coordinators, Claire McDonald and Hannah Green. They have worked as volunteer coordinators for the past few years, and they have quite a large job wrangling our more than 180 volunteers. And then lastly, we have two Library and Education Day coordinators, Ali Landy and Matthew No, who are joining the festival for the first time. Ali is based in Toronto and is a graduate student at the Faculty of Information. And Matthew is joining us from Harvard Medical and is active in Graphic Medicine International. So we have a core team of about a dozen part-timers, as well as various contractors who worked on the festival throughout the years. And then we have about 180 volunteers that work on the festival, not to mention working in tandem with our partners at the Beguiling Comic Arts and especially the Beguiling Library Services for the return of Library and Education Day.
Wow, that's tremendous. I mean, a lot of people don't understand and appreciate what goes on behind the scenes. So it's nice you're able to call out these folks and know that whoever's working on it got your back, so to speak, and is doing it because they believe in it. And I think that's wonderful. So that's tremendous. I've reported about TCAF in the past, but I'm wondering what can attendees expect that's new at this year's event?
So, I think the biggest thing, and we have tried to message this out, even though we're still getting communications where people are like, so I go to the library, right? No, so we're not at the Toronto Reference Library. That's the biggest thing, of course, to report this year is TCAF is moving for the first time in 15 years. So we are staying in downtown Toronto, but we will be at Toronto Metropolitan University Mattamy Athletic Centre, aka the former Maple Leaf Gardens. So right downtown on Carleton Street. So that's one of the biggest things to expect about the festival that will be different. New space. We actually also have slightly more space. So we are able to let in more exhibitors than we have in the past, which is exciting. I mean, one of the things about TCAF is we really try to prioritize spotlighting people for the first time at a comic show. And indeed, about 25% of our exhibitors are first timers. And so we will have more space that we can spotlight. Also, this year, with our particular location and also just the current geopolitical climate, we are definitely focusing a lot on Canadian cartooning and sort of looking at Canadian comics now. Faith Erin Hicks is our poster artist for TCAF 2025. And some of our special guests who are coming include people among sort of wonderful canon of new and emerging talents in Canada, Kate Beaton and Guy Delisle coming as special guests, but also new and emerging artists, Boom, who's been nominated for a lot of awards for Jellyfish, published by Pow Pow Press. We have Cassandra Cullen, who has a title coming up from Scholastic that's been nominated for a bunch of Doug Wright Awards, and also just in general, so many Canadian artists that are coming that we're really trying to spotlight.
That is exciting. Lots for people to see and do no matter what you're looking for. There's always something new around the corner on different tables. So that's tremendous. And the fact that you mentioned it's in Old Maple Leaf Gardens, I was talking to a group of 7 guys and they said, this would be the only place in the world where you go to a comic book convention and a hockey game breaks out. So you never know. You never know.
Well, I mean, I think especially when I had asked Faith, it's foremost on my mind that, Faith's most recent title is Hockey Girl Loves Drama Boy. And I mean, I think especially in Canada, sports and arts and culture, there's an awful lot of overlap. And of course, the former Maple Leaf Gardens isn't just known for obviously hosting hockey. It's hosted a lot of famous concerts over the years too. So it does make sense to use a historic spot.
Oh gosh, yeah. I can remember my dad taking my sister and I to go see the Commodores, Bee Gees.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
I think even Sean Cassidy was there. Oh
Yep.
man. Yeah, a lot of great concerts. I'm sure Rush was one of them. I'm sure. Yeah. So
It's so cool. Well, yeah, Elvis played also Nirvana. So I mean, a lot of Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now you mentioned a lot of different things that are happening. Are there any specific events you like to call out for attendees?
Everything will be announced on the website. So even by the time folks are listening, definitely check out our website. So torontocomics.com, and we'll have all the special events listed, but some ones that I can share right now that we have that are announced for the week of TCAF. We're actually doing, I think for the first time, a special co-presenting event with TIFF, so the Toronto International Film Festival. So we're doing a special screening of Paying for It, and we will have director Sukyin Lee and cartoonist Chester Brown there to talk about the film, and of course Chester's original work Paying for It when it came out, and that will be in conversation with TCAF artistic curator Hoche Anderson. So that's going to be Tuesday evening on June 3rd at the Light Box, the TIFF's Light Box. So please look for tickets for that. You can find them on TIFF's site, but also information linked from the TCAF site. We also have a special event with Kate Beaton for Thursday, June 5th. So this will be actually to celebrate the paperback launch of Ducks, 2 years in the oil sands. So that will be in the evening on June 5th. And that's actually going to be held in partnership with our partners at Toronto Metropolitan University Faculty of Arts. So that's very close, short walking distance from Mattamy. We have TCAF's opening panel, of course, on Friday night, June 6th. On June 7th, we have the Doug Wright Awards will be happening during TCAF. We are also doing for the first time a special TCAF fundraising event in which we are having comic book artists engage in a round of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, to sort of raise awareness for the festival and also have a good time playing D&D. And then, going into Sunday, we have our TCAF after party afterwards and lots more of special events to be confirmed too as we lead up into the festival.
Wow. That is tremendous. There's something like every minute you're talking about something for everyone. That's great. That's great. So I've got to ask you this question. What makes TCAF better than any other festival out there?
Oh man, I'm going to get in trouble. And I love so many other festivals. When I was living and working in the US, I would routinely go to Small Press Expo. I love so many other indie festivals. So I'm not going to say better. I will say maybe one of the things that made TCAF special to me, and I know has made TCAF special for a lot of people, is that there's definitely a nice experience in which you can have people that are established comic book artists. So, we will have major publishers like Penguin Random House will be at TCAF. Scholastic is actually celebrating the 20-year anniversary of their graphics imprint. but we also have independent publishers, and we also have people that are independent and up and coming artists. So it's one of, I think, the few spaces in which you can see somebody like, Chester Brown tabling close by somebody who is a recent grad from Seneca or Sheridan, maybe tabling for the first time. And I think having that sort of experience of discovering new artists, but also maybe seeing established artists in slightly different, a little bit more low-key settings is one of the nicest things about TCAF. And of course, one of the things, and I don't know if we've ever given ourselves enough credit for this, that makes TCAF a little bit unique is we have had professional development programming for more than 10 years. So we do offer professional development free programming for both comics creatives through Word Balloon Academy. And so that's the Friday before TCAF. So that's Friday, June 6th. And then we've also offered for more than 10 years our Libraries and Education Day, and that will also be Friday, June 6th. And both are a full day of programming for people like working within comics or people that are working within libraries and education in comics to learn more about how to use comics, how to grow their practice, and also to hear from people working in the industry and working in the profession. And that is something that's quite unusual. I sort of took it for granted. And then when you think about it, that was actually how I had first come to TCAF, was I had come to present at the Libraries and Education Day. And that was one of the first times that I had met sort of a group of other people doing the same thing and sort of having that dedicated space. So it's always been, I know, a special place for me. And I think for everybody who attends that, yeah, you might get to see somebody like Junji Ito, and you also might get to discover like the coolest, most esoteric zine on something that you've never seen before. So
that is cool. So you mentioned it before, but I should ask you again, where can people find out more information about TCAF?
You can find everything up on our website. So we are torontocomics.com, and you can also find information across social media. We are on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And on the website, you can find the exhibitor list, a little bit more information about our exhibitors, special event information, the schedule and registration for TCAF Librarian Educator Day, Word Balloon Academy, and if you'd like to volunteer for the festival. You can also find information about how to support TCAF through our ongoing fundraising campaign.
That's great. So, Amie, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Especially with comics, I think sometimes people, unfortunately, still have an idea that there's a certain type of comic or a certain type of comic reader. And I just want to reassure people, comics are for everyone. There's always a right time to start. You don't have to have been reading them forever since, you were a kid. You don't have to know, the entire catalog of a particular thing. I think comics can be a wonderfully inclusive space. We're not always, but so like we try to, I think, appeal to our better selves. And that's definitely what we try to do in terms of spotlighting artists' work and just the range of like storytelling and representations that comics can actually encapsulate. And I think giving people an opportunity to find a story that moves them or a story that surprises them or a story that reflects their lived experiences is one of the great benefits of comics. And that's something we really try to spotlight at TCAF.
Thanks to Amie for the chat. You can discover more about Toronto Comic Arts Festival at Toronto Comics on all social media channels and at torontocomics.com. Thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations and discover how creators are making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along at True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any null feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.